If you search online for a definition of Bitcoin, you'll find that it's a digital currency. But that's just the beginning of the story. So what exactly is Bitcoin and how is it different from money? To answer that question, let's start at the very beginning. In 2009, a person or a group of people under the name Satoshi Nakamoto wrote a paper describing a digital cash system that functions without the need for a central bank or a single administrator. That's because, unlike dollars or euros, Bitcoins are not linked to any government or financial institution. If you want to use a Bitcoin as a means of exchange, you have to find someone who wants to accept it as payment for goods or services. In theory, if both parties agree to a transaction, then it doesn't really matter what the item is being purchased. However, most people think that Bitcoins should be used to purchase other Bitcoins. If you don't believe me, read through the Bitcoin.org website, and you'll see that most people are interested in investing or trading Bitcoins rather than spending them. This speculation drives the price of Bitcoin up and creates a bubble where investors get in only because they expect the price to go higher. Of course, when bubbles burst, many investors panic and sell their Bitcoins, which lowers the price. This means that the value of your investment will fluctuate depending on market sentiment, and there is no guarantee that you will make money. In fact, if you had invested in Bitcoin at the end of 2017, when the price reached nearly $20,000, you would still be waiting for your investment to recover. And therefore, there is no central authority that can share transaction data with law enforcement if they request it. However, despite the fact that they are easy to move from one place to another, you cannot actually spend them in most places. Just like you can't use a stamp to buy something at the grocery store. Even though it might have some value to collectors, you must first trade it in for real money. And since the value of Bitcoin is so volatile, merchants are often reluctant to accept it as payment. This means that by default, every Bitcoin transaction is anonymous. It has a limited supply, and it is decentralized, meaning that no single entity controls it. While it can be exchanged for real money, it's not legal tender, and it's not backed by any government. It's also not useful as a store of value due to its high volatility. In short, Bitcoin is a digital asset with no real use case other than buying more Bitcoin. But hey, that doesn't mean it won't have some value in the future. After all, who would have thought that one day we'd all be walking around carrying iPhones and Samsung Galaxy devices instead of bricks of gold? Of course, exchanges and other service providers are required by law to share information about suspicious activity, but this only applies if the transaction amount exceeds $10,000 or 100 Bitcoins, whichever is higher. Also keep in mind that Bitcoin exchanges are required to implement anti-money laundering procedures similar to banks. So if you buy Bitcoin with your debit card, your bank might flag the transaction as suspicious and contact you for more information. The very first block of Bitcoins was awarded to whoever could solve a complex math equation, and it took about 3 hours. Since then, the difficulty of these equations has increased significantly, and now it takes millions of computers all over the world almost 10 minutes to verify a group of transactions and add them to the blockchain. This means that the supply of new Bitcoins entering circulation is limited and will continue to become more scarce as time goes on. The key idea is that transactions can be verified by multiple participants and then grouped together and recorded in a public ledger called a blockchain. This makes it possible to spend the same Bitcoin twice and allows people to have faith that the system works without the need for an intermediary like a bank or a government. Following this paper, Nakamoto launched the first Bitcoin software client and sent the first Bitcoin transaction to one of his colleagues as a reward for his help in launching the system. So while we know that the first Bitcoin transaction happened in 2009, we don't really know who was involved or what they bought with their Bitcoins. Anyway, back to the question of how Bitcoin is different from money. Finally, since Bitcoins are digital, they are much easier to move across borders than physical money. For this reason, they are sometimes called cryptocurrencies. To conclude, we can say that Bitcoin is a digital token that can be transferred between users without the need for a financial intermediary. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more content. We'll see you in the next video.